Now when they drew near to Jerusalem, to Bethphage and Bethany, at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it. And if anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' say, 'The Lord has need of it. I will send it back here immediately.'" And they went away and found a colt tied at a door outside in the street, and they untied it. And some of those standing there said to them, "What are you doing untying the colt?" And they told them what Jesus had said, and they let them go. And they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. And many spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut from the fields. And those who went before and those who followed were shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest." This event tells one of the most important moments in Jesus' time here on earth. We call it in the church the triumphant entry. The day that Jesus rode with triumph into the gates of Jerusalem, into the very city itself, with armies of people around him, laying down branches, waving them, and their cloaks as well, proclaiming him as king, which is incredible. A carpenter from up in a backwater town nowhere in Israel being called king, the same as David long ago. And yet, even as they joyfully proclaim this, they don't quite yet understand it fully. You see, when Jesus rode in, notice that he rode in on a colt, on a donkey. It's not exactly the most magnificent steed, is it? It's almost a sign of humility. Yes, Jesus is king, and he is accepting what they are saying, what is rightfully his, and yet he goes in to accept it humbly on the back of a donkey. For he is a king who is both Lord and powerful, but humble in heart. And we see that play out in the very fact that only a few days after he rode in, this glorious moment of triumph, he would be hung on a cross, rejected, condemned, and left to die. But we, in our ancient tradition, strive to remember this occasion, and we use it as the first celebration in our week-long remembrance of Christ's death and resurrection of Holy Week by calling this day, appropriately enough, Palm Sunday. We decorate our churches in red, and many of us even wear red ourselves to symbolize royal red for our King that we are proclaiming. And we start outside of our church, actually, outside those doors, and we get palm branches and palm leaves and we wave them ourselves just as those crowds did 2,000 years ago, proclaiming Hosanna in the highest. And worshiping and singing together, we walk in those doors just as the crowds did following Christ to the gates of Jerusalem all those years ago. And then we come in worshiping our King. But we carry with us a bittersweet note as well, for we're all too aware what was about to come. And so after we've settled in and begun our worship, we remember his passion. And we do this in a various assortment of ways. Some congregations will read it together, read the whole story of his passion and death. Others will chant it and sing it to one another. And still, others will put on a play, actually, and reenact the events that happened in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. But whichever way it's done, we celebrate his triumphal entry, but know what that triumphal entry meant. He came as king, but he was rejected on our behalf. The victory was still his, though, and we celebrate that on Easter Sunday at the end of this process that we call Holy Week. We remember his story and what ultimately, through him, is our story.